Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour, because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you. A couple more keeping your hands to yourself kind of stories. There was a night that I was doing a stop that this particular stop is about sex workers in the 1800s, and this particular group of sex workers, one of the things they were known for doing is just unrolling a mattress and going to town wherever the hell they wanted to. And I'm telling this story, and it's a fun story, but my guests are looking a bit horrified, so I pause and I look up, and there is a couple having sex on the sidewalk right behind me. And my response to this is sort of like, okay, well, historically accurate, but we're leaving. And I turned and took the group away. That was the same location that, we've seen a lot of stuff at that location, including one night I was trying to do a story there, and I kept hearing splashing behind me, and I got nervous and looked behind me, and in the fountain, there was a homeless man, butt naked and bathing. But, also, generally speaking, very important here, please don't touch your tour guide. Every single tour guide I know has at least one story of somebody coming up and grabbing them on the ass while they're in the middle of the story. Now, luckily, I can say most of these stories do not involve guests on the tour. It's usually just people walking by. I, for one, was like little old lady magnet there for a while. It was like one summer, I think it was like 5 or 6 different random little old ladies came up and slapped me on the ass. The most memorable was a night that I was wearing a relatively short skirt, and this lady comes up, grabs me with an entire handful right under my skirt, so there is flesh-on-flesh contact, and just screams in my ear, "Tell them about the vampires!" And no, at that moment, I was not talking about vampires. But there's been another night relatively recently that I was telling a story, and a group was coming, another group of tour guests with another guide. So as usual, I waved my guest to step out of the way to make sure there was a clear path. But some guides, just in a desperate attempt not to interrupt your story or not to have, elements of their story ruined by your story, will take their guests out into the street to avoid you. Now, this is not what we're legally supposed to do, but some of them just do it. And this particular guide was doing that. He took his group out into the street instead of going past my group. And that meant his group was walking in the middle of the street right behind me. And as they walk by, I feel that distinctive feeling of a hand on my ass. Now, luckily that night I was wearing shorts, so at least there was fabric defending me. But as usual, I lose my temper. I turn and snap at the guy, "Get your hands off me." And I notice that while he has reached out and grabbed my ass, he has done this with his arm still around his girlfriend. So I end up actually screaming, "Get your hands off my ass," especially while you're holding your girlfriend. And my thought about this was that the girl would see this and she would reprimand him. Instead, his girlfriend turned and looked at me and giggled as if this was appropriate somehow. But my favorite element of this entire story is after it all passed and I was turning back to my guest, I apologized about losing my temper. And one of the girls in my tour was like, "That should be illegal." And I'm like, "It is. Have you not heard of sexual assault? That is illegal." Moral of the story, please don't touch your tour guides. And the great thing about it is I can say that both for the female tour guides and the male tour guides. Even, yes, my male tour guide friends, almost every single one of them has at least one story of somebody grabbing their ass on tours. Just don't do it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you for listening.